Hello and welcome to Meet Our Makers, an artist interview podcast produced in association with Beats Per Minute. I'm your host, Jeremy J. Fissette. On this episode, we get to meet Sally Potter. Sally Potter is not a name you would normally associate with music, but since we don't only do music here on Meet Our Makers, I was very excited to have her. But, of course, she is here for a music reason. Sally Potter is best known as a filmmaker. She has made a wide array of films such as Orlando, Ginger and Rosa, most recently The Road's Not Taken with Javier Bardem and Elle Fanning. But now she's actually releasing her debut full-length record, which is called Pink Bikini. In this chat, she and I talk quite a bit about Pink Bikini, including what led her to release a record of such personal singer-songwriter style songs about her childhood, her adolescence, and a lot of other things after such a long career in cinema. We talk about the differences and similarities for her between her filmmaking and her songwriting, as well as how her score work, because she has been composing her own scores for years, has bled into her own personal songwriting. We talk about some specific songs, themes, influences, and a lot more about this really special record. We do talk about film. She has had a long, successful career in independent cinema. We talk about what first got her interested in film and filmmaking, her foundational cinema experiences, and we go for a few minutes on Orlando with Tilda Swinton and why it's still her most revered and discussed film, and why she even took on the task of adapting Virginia Woolf in the first place. We talk about a lot in between. It was a really delightful chat, and if you're a fan of any of her movies, music, whatever the case, you just want an interesting chat with a really interesting and storied artist, I think you'll enjoy this. Before we start, I do want to remind you, Meet Our Makers is now on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/meetourmakers, and you can, for a very low monthly fee, become a patron of the show, help me out, and eventually I'll help you guys out with some fun perks. You can also find us on Instagram at Meet Our Makers Podcast and Twitter at @meetourmakers_. So thank you for listening. Please enjoy. This is me meeting Sally Potter.
Good, thank you. Nice to be with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for hanging out for a little bit. When I got the email a few weeks back about your record getting announced, I sort of jumped at the chance to invite you because I was like, oh, that's Sally Potter? She's making a record? And I was like, that's cool. Let me look into this. And then I was like, you know what? I'll take a shot. And luckily, everyone was pretty on board. So thank you for joining me for a little bit.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
So you are obviously, to most people, more known as a filmmaker. I don't know why I emphasize it that way, as a filmmaker. And we will talk about film, of course, but I do want to stress and talk about this album coming out, which is out July 14th, and it's called Pink Bikini. It is your first traditional studio album. I know that you've done a lot of composing work for your own films and things like that, but it is your first sort of studio, sort of more pop-oriented record. Has this kind of music making always been a part of your life, and it's just something we didn't know about until now?
It's been a more private part of my life, although actually in my film scores, I've often used my own voice as part of the texture of the score, but rather under the radar, one might say. So I think it's a new departure to put my own voice center and to be singing my own songs rather than giving my songs to other people to sing.
Have you done that a lot before?
I have in some projects, and in my 20s I was singing in several groups. I was singing songs written by other people, and I was doing a lot of improvised music in which I improvised the lyrics as well. So it's not completely new territory. But at the same time, it's for me a very new thing to do, to decide to put out an album with songs that are so personal also. And at this particular moment in my life.
Yeah, what brought you to this moment to decide that now is the time?
Well, I find that the choice of projects and what I do, and I'm sure this is in common with many other people, often seems to decide itself. It's not necessarily a conscious, rational decision like, oh, hey, I think now's the time to do an album.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like an accumulated feeling of longing and necessity, and a feeling of, this is the form at the moment that I want to really spend some time working deeply with and try to understand better, really, what a song is, what a song can do, what lyrics can do differently than the spoken word. Is a lyric a poem, or is it, what is it exactly, and so on. So the wanting to just explore all of that and work with a form that I've always loved to listen to, and have sung some versions of, but not in this particular way before. I mean, I think it's no accident that it came out of the pandemic time, when everybody was very much driven into themselves, and into a feeling also of, life is short and precarious and fragile, and we don't know where it's going. And if there's anything in your heart that you really want to do or feel you want to explore, don't wait, do it now. So I think that there may have been a little bit of that too. And of course, songwriting compared to filmmaking is a very portable form and a much easier means of production. If you could see me, you'd see that I was sitting in a hut. I'm speaking from the center of France, in a hut with a view of mountains in the distance, with a keyboard next to me, and in front of the computer where I usually write with Logic my stuff, and with a microphone behind me. So this is where, in solitude, I can work for hour upon hour upon hour, and at the end of that hour upon hour and about, there's a song with a full arrangement, with all the instruments sounding more or less like instruments, although they then get replaced one by real musicians in the arrangement. But it's luxurious in a way to be able to take a form so far alone. The filmmaking is, you're very dependent as a director on an enormous number of people working with you under your direction,
right,
to make something happen. It's complex. It takes enormous amounts of time and effort. So there's something luxurious about exploring this more intimate form, which, however, is one of the oldest forms there has ever been.
Yeah.
The singing voice telling a story of some kind. And I think with instruments or without instruments, with rhythm, with a guitar, with a piano, or much earlier, perhaps just with the sound of stamping feet. And I think there's something about returning to that basic human, beautiful, glorious, and simple physical thing that is in fact so hard to do, to do well. So it's been a wonderful and very scary experience in certain ways. Yeah.
Do you think that the years of film composing has sort of influenced this record at all, or did it feel like a total break from that?
Oh, it's hugely influenced, because by working on all the scores, I've spent hours and hours of my life in studios, mixing, editing, recording, working with musicians, learning how to arrange, learning how to get the best out of people, learning how to make soundtracks. And the difference is that people often, when they watch a film, absorb the music almost subliminally. They don't really listen to it that carefully unless they see somebody making it or see somebody singing it, if there's a voice involved. So, but it's if you like, as a training for how to work with many different levels of sound and music, and with musicians and with arrangements. It's a wonderful and in its own right very valuable thing to do. However, it is different, of course, moving into a song or a sequence of songs, each of which has its own disciplines, its own genre history. People have expectations about the kind of shape it might have. There's many choices to make about whether to leave a voice very raw and very direct, or whether to mediate it through all kinds of studio sounds. In this case, I made the choice to leave everything very raw, very direct. This is just simple, straight vocal recording. There's no vocoders or other effects, studio effects. And then there are musicians playing the arrangements. So it's traditional in that sense, and intimate was the goal.
Yeah.
The feeling that I wanted to feel as if somebody listening felt as if the song was being sung to them individually, close up. These are not songs being sung in an enormous hall to an enormous public.
Right.
They're like, I'm singing to you.
Yeah, they are very intimate. There's not even a huge amount of sort of reverb or anything like that. It feels very like you're in a space with these people making music.
Yes, it's funny. I just listened because I thought I better listen to these songs. I haven't listened to them for a while.
Yeah.
After listening to them nonstop all the time in 10 million, re-recording, re-editing, remixing, and so on. I left it alone, and I just listened. I thought, my God, there's almost nothing. I mean, this really is naked. There is no reverb. There's a tiny, tiny, tiny bit, but it's very, very, very held back in that way, but very forward in the other way, in the sense that it could be literally somebody singing a yard or a meter away from you, or right next to you, into your ear.
Yeah. So yeah, you wrote all the lyrics to this. You wrote all the music. You said you arranged ahead of time, and then the instrumentalist sort of played your arrangements. Is there any sense of like intimidation or nervousness about going into this specific kind of endeavor now after so many years in the film industry?
Oh, total terror, you mean? Yes, unmitigated, shaking levels of fear. I mean, it's very exposing, and it's very, it's terrifying. But I've always thought terror or fear should never be a reason to hold you back,
right?
To hold me back. It's like scorn the fear and do it anyway if possible, and to go for it, and see what comes out and see how people respond.
Yeah. And you've mentioned the songs on Pink Bikini being particularly personal. I know the press around the record is sort of describing it as being inspired by your youth and your adolescence and young adulthood. Are we meant to take this album as almost a sort of memoir, or is it a little looser than that?
Well, one of the lines in the first song is this really a memory or a faded photo that I can see? And that's trying to give a clue in a way about how we work with memory, and how you work with memory in a lyric. In the act of writing something or describing it, you kind of you reinvent the past in a way, even if you try and make it exactly true to what you experienced. In the shaping of it, in the crafting of it, in the making it rhyme, in the making it scan, and so on. Inevitably, there's poetic license and transformation along the way. So I tried to have a yardstick of a kind of emotional truth about everything, even if these were not necessarily all my direct experiences. Maybe they were things I had observed, or maybe they were things I had imagined. And but there is, I hope, a feeling of truth in them. Now, memoir, I don't know. I think if I was writing a memoir, it would be much fuller, and there would be much more context. These are short, songs, poems, if you like, lyrics.
Right.
And so I hope they have the directness of personal truth, without telling the whole story. But they are about, or based around, a period of my life, of everybody's life, I'm sure of your life too, of the teenage years, when you transition out of dependency in childhood into a kind of independence and adulthood. And that's a confusing set of goodbyes and hellos, overlapping with longings and griefs and losses, and it's very, very, very intense. And so I felt that it was an incredibly fertile, rich area to explore lyrically, being sung as if I was in it, imagining myself into my own shoes or somebody else's shoes, because I've changed obviously a great deal since I was a teenager. So it's almost like looking back to another person. But at the same time, it was me. So it opens up the whole kind of mystery of who we are at different points in our life. You know, are we really the same person all the way through? When we look back, are we looking back at an imaginary past, or at things that actually happened, or at feelings and so on? So exploring all of that and extending a hand in a way to this vulnerable, troubled teenager, and in a way letting her know that it will pass, and there will come a time when all these experiences have become material for songs.
Yeah. There's that great line on One Day, the song that sounds most explicitly sort of like you're singing to your older self, where you say,
yes,
one day the shame will have gone, the wounds will have healed.
yes.
So creating this album is almost, at least partially, like you say, sort of like reassurance for that younger self.
Yes, and for each of us in our relationship with our younger self. I mean, I'm sure you can hear that I'm saying, yes, this is personal, but I'm also deflecting it from being only about me, because I think as a writer, as a film writer, you know, you often you try to base things in things that you know, but there's lots of ways of knowing things and knowing people. One of them is by being that person. The other is by observing other people closely. And the other is this voyage into the imagination, in which the people you create on the page or on your laptop or wherever you write become as real as you are. And I think it's that area also that this is exploring.
Yeah. So let's talk also about the sort of stylistic element of this record, because I've seen a few of your films. I was a film student, so I've been aware of your work for quite a while, but obviously not as a traditional songwriter. So I had no idea what to expect when I hit play, on the album.
Yes.
And so I was writing my notes down for this talk as I was listening for the first time, and I wrote that it sounds sort of almost folky and jazzy at the same time. I wrote almost like if Leonard Cohen made a French pop record. And then I got to the song Ghosts, where you actually mentioned Leonard Cohen.
Yeah.
Are those styles, would you agree with that? Or are those styles of things you actually usually enjoy, like that kind of music?
Well, I certainly thought a lot about what was the kind of music I was listening to in my teenage years. And I was listening to Leonard Cohen on repeat. I was also listening to Bob Dylan on repeat.
Who also gets name checked there.
Yes, exactly. In that particular song, I was also listening to everything that Billie Holiday ever recorded, and Ella Fitzgerald and Patsy Cline. And then I was listening to Lotte Lenya, and I was listening to Bert Brecht and Kurt Weill and so on. So in fact, my tastes were very eclectic. But I think that I was aware with these songs that they came out of the directness of the songwriting, let's say, of Dylan and Leonard Cohen, both of whom are primarily poets. Dylan more, I would say, coming out of the history and the genre of protest song, and Leonard Cohen coming more out of both a mixture of music as a form of transcendence, of meditation, a kind of atmosphere for living, but also exploring the strangeness really of love and attachment and impermanence, all of which create a very melancholy feeling that a teenage girl certainly can kind of understand very well indeed. But also can understand protest, because for example, in my teenage years, I was on lots of marches against nuclear weapons. I was a really young activist in that way, and felt that it was my responsibility to try and save the planet from extinction. So I can relate very strongly to young climate activists now, for example, who have that same feeling of anger and responsibility and bewilderment, actually, about the absurdity of anybody ever wanting to risk the glories of life on Earth for whatever reason. So I think, where did we start on this line of thought?
The styles of the music, Leonard Cohen.
Thank you. I took a great big walk around the subject.
That is so okay.
No, but the French bit, not really. I don't really remember listening to, except for Edith Piaf, actually, who I did listen to, but I don't really remember listening to sort of French balladeering. I always found it a bit over romantic, actually, when I did listen. I liked the hard edge, the hard tones of Bob Dylan, or and the grit of it, or in Leonard Cohen's case, the romanticism, I suppose. At the time, yeah. They both felt, both of them felt like they were going right to the limits of what they could do with the song form. They were right out there pushing it. And of course there were many others who were brilliant. But I think it would be true to say I listened to those two more than some of the others. I mean, genre-wise, though, jazz, absolutely. I was listening to more instrumental jazz than song, other than Billie Holiday, I would say. But I listened hugely to most of the jazz greats, from Charlie Parker to Miles Davis to Thelonious Monk or whatever. And it was those wonderfully broken up, developing, evolving riffs, which however underneath had a very clear chordal structure and development. And it was that mixture of sort of freedom and discipline in jazz that I found absolutely intoxicating and made me want to move. So if there's any of that influence in this, I'd be delighted. I mean, there's certainly an upright bass, which is written in, I would say, much more in the jazz genre than anything else. I also use electric bass, but the upright bass, if you like, is perhaps the strongest single jazz sound in the arrangement. And then there's acoustic guitars and electric guitar played by
and the harp too.
And the harp makes an appearance too. Yeah.
Yep. Do you have a favorite song on this record?
I try not to have favorites, like people say about their children, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think I at different times have, some of them were more enjoyable to sing than others. The Flames was very enjoyable to sing, and it's because it's so much about longing and desire. It made it easy. How can I say, there was a kind of flow to that was very nice to sing. I mean, Ghosts, the one we've just been talking about, that mentions both Dylan and Leonard Cohen, I think that I enjoy that. I guess I don't know, I enjoy different ones at different times.
Yeah, Ghosts that was another line I pulled out, the line, I'd rather be the singer than his muse.
Yes.
I love that line, because it's kind of like you asserting yourself in this realm of saying, like, well, I'm going to do this too. I'm going to sing these songs that I wrote as well. Yes.
I mean, that came out of a real feeling that I had not only when I was listening to music, but when I was watching films, when I was reading books and so on, about authorship, which was mostly male, not exclusively, especially not with books. There were so many great female writers since a long time, because it's the cheapest form. So nobody can stop a woman picking up a pencil and a piece of paper at her kitchen table and writing a book.
Right.
The bigger the means of production gets, the harder it's been for women and people of color to sort of break in and get their hands on the machine, if you like,
Yep.
and find their real authorial voice. But I often found when I was watching films, I say reading books or listening to music, that there I would be, let's say with Leonard Cohen, as we've been talking about him, listening to this wonderful deep voice, singing mostly within a few notes, very, 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 very simple melodically things. Very interesting lyrics, but often about these mystery women, Marianne or Suzanne. And I gradually realized that, hold on a second, what is this divide here? That there's this person whose work I absolutely love, but I want to be like him. I don't want to be Marianne. I don't want to be Suzanne and her tea and oranges,
Right.
somehow on the periphery of life, being the one that mysteriously inspires somebody to write a song about them. No, I want to write the song. And similarly feeling that about Ravenna, and feeling a kind of colleagueship, and then realizing I was excluded from this magical circle. I had exactly the same experience in film, of course, as in my early days of being a film director, that there was somehow a secret society from which I was excluded, and would have to really fight my way to find a voice, fight my way to find a right to have a voice. So that became part of the texture of these songs, is about a girl, a young female person wanting to break through these invisible limits that seem to be imposed on the potential of what she could do in any area. This could be, I could be talking about being a scientist or a mathematician or anything really. Every young woman growing up, certainly of my generation, will recognize that and know what that feeling is. I think the younger generation, and I'm not saying it's all easy for men too, by the way, just to point that out, but at all, there are many other different kinds of difficulties and pressures, and I'm well aware of that. But I grew up female, and so I'm aware of that. And what it takes really to break out or break free from the strictures that and limits that society seems to have been placed on you, which are often invisible to you and invisible to others too, but you experience as a heavy weight on your back or as a kind of silencing. So these songs are that journey of somebody breaking out of that, finding the voice, finding an equilibrium, and in a way healing from this, what can only be as from troubled and turbulent years and experiences.
Do you see any connections between the songs on this record and any of your films throughout your career?
Yes, the film called Ginger and Rosa, which starred the wonderful Elle Fanning.
Oh yeah.
When she was only 13 at the time.
I know. That's, by the way, one of
16.
That's one of my favorite performances maybe ever. She's so good in that.
She's absolutely astonishing, and I loved working with her. It was quite an amazing experience, and I think mutually so. And that also covers teenage, a shorter period of just the year of being 16, and some very complicated family relationships in it. So I think that I've obviously when I was writing that, I was aware that there was something very rich to be explored in that time, and also very aware, looking out into something I did not grow up with, which is social media, and seeing the new pressures, compare and despair, all the pressures on appearance, all the other things that have come with that whole different way of looking at yourself and looking at others. And I think there's lots of parallels really across all these different generations and across all the technological developments that mean that we communicate with each other in different ways in each subsequent generation.
Well, it's interesting too, because from the films of yours I have seen, and then the others that I at least am aware of, including Ginger and Rosa and Orlando and things like that, your films do often seem to explore characters who are reacting to their surroundings and sort of figuring out how to make it through those surroundings. And I feel like that theme lends itself relatively well to this album as well.
Survival, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Survival through difficulty.
Right.
And what I think, if I've learned something through my close relationships over the years with many, many, many beloved others, it's that you don't have to dig very deep to find out that everybody has a story. Everybody has struggled. Everybody, in some sense, is trying to make it through and find a way to survive and be a good person and be, or whatever their ambition is in life. And so I think survival, yes, survival through difficulty is a good, it's a turbulent and rich area to explore, but it's also a good, how can I say, I'm hesitating over the word message because I don't like to feel that my films, all my songs have a message. They don't, but they're communicating something, and with in a way, love for strangers, the strangers who will watch my films. I never quite know who. I know that over the years, many millions of people have watched cumulatively what I've made as films. With the songs, I don't know who's going to listen. I think every time you make something, it's like putting a message in a bottle, throwing it into the ocean, and hoping it will arrive somewhere on a beach, and somebody will find the bottle and find the message in the bottle. And I think that's the feeling that I have. But it's like, how can I say? It's as if, and I think everybody who's ever been on a stage, as I did in my earlier years, in my 20s and 30s, and looked out at an audience, you suddenly have this feeling that you love every single one of them. And people often say that from a stage, don't they, in a gig? Like, oh, I love you, London, or I love you, I love you, LA, or wherever it may be. And it's a real feeling at that moment. It's a real feeling, a primal connection, where you know that the divisions that there are and the separations that there are from one to the other, whoever we may be, are illusory, and that we are kind of one, and we become united often through music, especially. And there's a kind of wonderful kind of synthesis that happens that is fueled by this unproblematic love, which can be misinterpreted as being showbizy insincerity. It's not.
Right.
It's a real feeling.
So myself, as someone who studied film and fell in love with movies probably when I was like 12 or 13 years old, I have a very distinct memory of the first few films that sort of exposed me to film as its own art form, as its own thing, as opposed to growing up and just watching movies to be entertained. At some point, there was a switch, where I saw a few things and I was just blown away that this could happen.
What were they?
One is Terry Zwigoff's Ghost World.
Yeah.
I saw Me and You and Everyone We Know.
Yeah.
Miranda July film. And that was also around when I started watching Hayao Miyazaki films.
Right. Okay.
So Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke and those kind of huge stories. And I was just sort of dazzled by that idea that you could make something that was important and moving and interesting.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of yours that sort of ushered you into that world?
Wow. Well, I watched a lot of early Russian cinema, like Eisenstein and Vertov, the really experimental earliest days, the 1920s, when people were really finding out what montage was and what it could do. And then I would think that there was French New Wave, Godard and Truffaut, like Jules Jim, films like that, and then obviously Orson Welles, Citizen Kane, those, and Powell and Pressburger, The Red Shoes, or A Matter of Life and Death, and then Satyajit Ray, the Apu trilogy, and then also, I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Like I can't try and kind of remember like a eureka moment of one film sticking out. What really attracted me was that there was this fantastic, marvelous, wonderful, exciting, thrilling body of work to explore that I would probably never reach the end of. Just True. The same feeling I get when I go in a bookshop. I feel like I want to read all of them. But when am I going to have the time? And I had that feeling about cinema too. And I never felt that there was a really big difference, let's say, between Singing in the Rain on the one hand, great big Hollywood song and dance movie with serious ideas behind the story, but the form of it was absolutely popular entertainment on the one hand, and on the other hand, some very rigorous and obscure and interesting early piece of Russian cinema that was, taking on the subject of the revolution. I mean, they're all part of this same form. They're very cinema is a very, despite all its differences, it's a very unified form. It's like it travels internationally. You can have all these cultures in your hand, in front of your eyes. You can enter all these different worlds, one after another, and they're all aspects of the same prism of light, of illumination, of somehow entering worlds. That was the great attraction for me. It was that feeling that in the frame there was a world, and that I could go into that world, and I could write that. I could invent that world. I could write it.
Yeah, I think that's part of what inspired me to end up going into film in college, was that same idea of like, well, how do I do this? Because this is so exciting.
Yes, exactly.
Your first film was 1983's The Gold Diggers, but I feel like with Julie Christie, we should say, the great Julie Christie.
Yes.
But I feel like you sort of broke into international visibility with Orlando.
Indeed.
And it does feel like Orlando's the one that still gets talked about the most. I don't know if that's true in your own spheres.
It is true. It is true. And everybody that worked on it says the same thing to me. Sandy Powell, the costume designer, who's had whatever it is, 6 Oscars now for
the great
other
Sandy
things.
Powell. Yeah.
The last time we met, she said, the only thing anybody ever wants to talk about, Sally, is Orlando. Tilda says the same thing. So in a way, we're all both cursed and blessed by the fact that film that was made 30 years ago is the one that both kind of haunts us, but haunts us in a good way.
Right.
Because what's happened is it has endured in the most incredible way. It just keeps on being shown.
Yeah, I saw it in school, so there you go.
Right, there you go. Exactly, there you go.
And so now I'm an English teacher, so I'm always curious about adaptations, and I was wondering what inspired you to tackle a Virginia Woolf story, because from an English teacher's perspective and a literature student's perspective, Woolf's texts seem particularly tricky to adapt. So like I would probably be too intimidated to ever try it.
Yeah.
But what was it about Orlando that sort of struck you and made you want to go, okay, I can make this into something?
Well, when I first read it as a teenager, probably about the time that I'm talking about, when I was also listening to Dylan and McCartney and so on, but I was also reading avidly all the time, and certainly reading Virginia Woolf. I think I was 14 when I first read it, and I experienced it as a very visual book. And then later, when I came to read Virginia Woolf's diaries, she talked about that her aim with it actually was to, as she put it, exteriorize consciousness. So she was creating images that would take us into the mind, how the mind works, how it playfully works. And so for me, it was very visible. I could see it. I was reading the book, but I could see it on the screen. So I felt a kind of peculiar confidence from that point of view. However, when I started talking to people about the fact that this was what I wanted to do, and I was starting to write notes and on an adaptation, how I might do this, how I might do that, what I would edit out, what I would leave in, whatever. The general response for many years was, "You must be insane." This cannot be done. It would be so expensive. And anyway, it's technically impossible. And anyway, it's a great classic and no one should ever touch it. So I got, I would say, zero encouragement from the world. Yeah. But that induced a kind of stubborn determination on my part. Because I knew, because I could actually see it in my mind's eye. I could see the finished film while I was writing it. I was utterly confident that I could make these images come about. But I was the only one initially who was confident. But, you know, I did do it eventually with, of course, working with a wonderful producer, Christopher Shepherd, who we've worked together ever since, who managed to pull together a co-production, very complicated multi-country co-production, and Tilda Swinton, who, you know, remained loyal. Yeah, the fantastic Tilda Swinton, at that point relatively unknown, but who, you know, was very keen and was, you know, very patient as the years of trying to raise the money went on year after year. But
she's kind of infamous for that.
we did it in the end.
Yeah, no, and it is the one. It is like the one that endures. I mean, I saw Ginger and Rosa in college, though it wasn't shown to me in a class. I just found it. And then the party is particularly interesting to me as well, from a few years ago, mostly because of the cast at first, because I mean, what a stacked cast of wonderful actors. Patricia Clarkson, one of my favorite actors, Cherry Jones, Timothy Spall, so many good people. I mean, Tilda was with you early on in Orlando, but do you usually like have at least an ideal of who you'd want to be in your roles as you're writing them?
No, not always. Sometimes it's like if I get over attached to thinking of one particular person in the role, I might shape it too much for that particular actor, and then in the end they don't do it. They can't do it, or they don't want to do it, or it's the wrong timing or something.
Right.
So it's better to, in a way, in the writing process, just let the character and the story go where it needs to go as a writer, and then imagine casting, start to meet people, and, you know, see whether the first choice people turn out to be the right first choice, or actually there's somebody better or more appropriate lurking. But with the party, the idea was, how can I set myself the task, how can I, with the most minimal of means, tell the most exciting story with the best actors in the world and shoot it in 2 weeks, so that it's possible to get these people in their difficult and busy lives. And that's how we did it. So it was shot in 2 weeks with this fantastic cast, all in one place.
Yeah.
And it was a very exciting thing to do. And of course, a lot of it is comedic. So, albeit acid, bittersweet comedy, political comedy, but we had a lot of laughs making it, and it was a very, very exciting film to make.
So my last question, because I know we're running short on time, I'm curious, since you've been making films for a while, you've inspired a lot of, I think, new filmmakers over the years. Can you think of any of the sort of bigger or more impactful lessons that you've learned on one of your own sets that has helped you become a better filmmaker?
You can never praise people too much.
That's a good one.
I spend a lot of time appreciating when I notice. It has to be truthful, but when I notice somebody doing something, whether it's somebody behind the camera or in front of the camera, doing something that I really appreciate, I tell them and I thank them. And it creates a wonderful atmosphere. It becomes like a kind of nectar that gets spread around when people feel respected and when they feel seen, when they feel that the work they're doing is appreciated and respected. They visibly grow and blossom in front of your eyes. So that's one very, very, very simple thing. And another is to keep your nerve, because often as a writer-director, you're the only one who holds the whole project in your head. Everyone else has a section of it. Even the lead actor, they only really know their own part. They don't know how it's all going to fit together. They don't know how you're going to edit it. Lots of things, that what kind of sound or music you're going to put on. So you have to keep your nerve and keep that feeling of singular responsibility on the one hand, which is leadership, and on the other hand, respect and appreciation for all these people who are giving you the very best of the work that they can do in order that your vision might become actual.
Yeah. Well, those are two good lessons. I think we can learn from those in our own spheres as well.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sally Potter, for taking some time today to hang out and chat about movie making and films, but also your debut full-length album, studio album, Pink Bikini, which is out July 14th. I had a good time and I really appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely talking to you.
You as well. Have a great evening.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.